Jon Snow is standing over Daenerys Targaryen's body with the knife still in his hand. And the dragon walks in. This is a creature that burned many people alive 4 episodes ago because he was angry. He puts his head down, he looks at Jon, and he lets him live. You've heard the explanation. Drogon smelled the blood. He recognized a Targaryen. Fire and blood protects its own. That reading isn't just wrong, it's backwards. Drogon didn't spare Jon because of who Jon was. He spared him because of what he was looking at instead. And it was never Jon. 3 things I'm going to prove to you. First, that the bloodline theory is already dead. The show tested that exact idea on screen with an actual Targaryen, and the answer was no. Almost nobody brings it up. Second, that Drogon in this scene isn't behaving like a guard or an executioner or a judge. He's doing something most people register emotionally and never actually analyze. And third, that when he burns the Iron Throne, it isn't rage and it isn't symbolism. It's identification. He's doing the same thing every animal does when the thing it loves stops moving. One note before we start. This case is built on show canon. Where I use prequel or book material, and I use it once, I'll tell you at the time. The detail is in where his head goes, not at Jon. Watch the order of what he looks at, because the order is the whole answer. We'll get there. But the bloodline theory has to come down first, because as long as you believe it, the rest of the scene stays invisible. Let's deal with the popular answer first, because it collapses faster than people expect. The claim is that Drogon detected Targaryen blood, and that blood granted Jon immunity. Dragons know their own. It's satisfying. It rhymes with the mythology of the world. Here's the problem. The show already ran that experiment, on screen, with the Targaryen. And the answer was no. Daenerys walks into a vault in Meereen to check on 2 chained dragons who haven't seen her in months. Her own dragons, hatched from her own fire, bonded to her since they were the size of cats. And they come at her out of the dark. She has to speak to them, name them, calm them down. For several seconds, being their mother and a Targaryen is not enough to stop them. And if it isn't enough for the 2 she raised, it is not doing the work people need it to do for a stranger. Blood alone doesn't do it. Bonding does. Time does. Being known does. And Jon has none of that with Drogon. He rode Rhaegal once. Badly. He has no relationship with Drogon at all. No shared history. No bond. No recognition on either side. If blood plus a single ride on a different dragon were enough to buy immunity, the scene has no tension in it. And the show absolutely shot it as though Jon were about to die. There's a second piece here, and I'm flagging it clearly. This one is prequel and book material, not original series canon, so I'm offering it as context rather than proof. In the wider history of this world, Targaryens have been killed by dragons repeatedly. It isn't rare. It's a recurring feature of the family. Rhaenyra Targaryen was eaten by one, in front of her own son. That's outside the 8 seasons, so don't let it carry the argument. But it does tell you what the mythology itself believes about that blood, and it isn't shield. Which means, whatever stops Drogon in that moment is not something about Jon. Jon is not the variable in this scene. He never was. So if Jon isn't the variable, something else in that room is. And it's the thing his head turns toward, which is where we're going, and why the order of his movements is going to matter more than anything anyone says. So stop watching Jon. Start watching the dragon. Because the first thing Drogon does when he arrives is not a threat display. It's not a challenge. It's something much smaller and much worse. He nudges her. He puts his snout against her body and he pushes, gently, the way you'd wake someone. And when nothing happens, he does it again. That is not a predator. That is not a guard. That is not an instrument of vengeance. That is an animal that does not understand what death is, trying to get a response. Anyone who has been around animals has seen a version of this. It's the most recognizable grief behavior there is. The nudge, the wait, the nudge again. At the moment Drogon lands, he does not know what happened. He knows she's on the ground and she isn't answering. He is not conducting an investigation. He's asking her to get up. Now hold that and look at Jon. Jon doesn't run. He doesn't raise the knife. He doesn't do one single thing that reads to an animal as threat. He stands completely still and waits to die. And this matters more than the blood does, because a dragon that has spent its whole life in combat has an extremely refined sense of what an attacker looks like. An attacker moves, an attacker postures, an attacker is loud. Jon presents as none of those things. He presents as one more piece of debris in a city that is already made of debris. There is no aggression signal for Drogon to respond to. Add the state this creature is in. He has just spent a day burning a city to the ground, screaming, flying, killing, for hours. He's exhausted, and he arrives to find the one thing in the world he's bonded to lying still on the floor. A creature in that condition is not running a careful assessment of who's guilty. It's flooded. And here's the comparison that makes the bond specific rather than general, because Drogon has lost family before. He watched Viserion go down through the ice, his own brother, and his response was to keep fighting, keep flying, and follow Daenerys out. No nudging, no searching, no standing over the body. He has grieved a sibling on screen, and it looked nothing like this. Whatever this is, it is reserved for her alone. And then he turns his head. Here's the detail. He turns away from Jon. He turns away from the man standing over her body holding a knife, and he looks at the throne. That's the sequence. Nudge her. Register no response. Turn, past Jon, and fix on the Iron Throne. Then burn it. Not Jon, not the knife, not the man, the chair. The usual reading of that is symbolic. Drogon is intelligent enough to understand that power killed his mother, so he destroys the symbol of power. It's poetic. It's the version that made it into 1,000 thumbnails. I don't think Drogon is doing symbolism. I think he's doing something far simpler and far sadder. He's identifying a cause. Think about what this animal has actually watched for the last several years. He has watched Daenerys orient her entire existence around one object. Every war she fought, every fleet she crossed, every city she burned, all of it aimed at one room with one chair in it. He has personally flown her toward it across a continent. And in the final hours of her life, he burns an entire city to put her in front of it. Then she gets there. She walks up to it. She reaches out and touches it. The first time she has ever touched the thing she organized her whole life around. And within minutes of touching it, she is dead on the floor. You don't need abstract reasoning to make that connection. You need the associative logic any animal has. The thing she went toward is the thing that was near her when she stopped moving. So the thing gets destroyed. That isn't a metaphor. That's cause and effect at the level a grieving animal can actually perform. And I think that's why the scene works on people, even when they can't articulate why. It isn't a dragon making a political statement about monarchy. It's a creature attacking the last thing it saw its mother reach for. And here is the thing that should stop you. The most powerful being in the story is the only one who never assigned that chair any value. He destroys the object the entire series is named after, and it takes him seconds, because to him, it was never anything. And notice what he does immediately after. He doesn't rampage. He doesn't hunt survivors. He picks her up and he leaves. The destruction stops the second the object is gone. That's not vengeance. Vengeance doesn't stop that cleanly. Jon was never in the equation, not because he was protected, because he was irrelevant to what Drogon had concluded. Now let me put the strongest arguments against this as forcefully as I can, because there are 4 good ones, and the last 2 are the ones that actually worry me. First, Drogon isn't an ordinary animal. He's demonstrably intelligent. He responds to language. He takes commands. He makes tactical decisions in battle. If he's smart enough to understand Dracarys, he's smart enough to understand who was holding the knife. Fair. 2 things back. Intelligence isn't forensic reasoning. A dog can learn dozens of commands and still not work out who knocked the vase over. Command comprehension is a trained response, not deduction. And more importantly, if Drogon had worked out that Jon did it, the scene has a hole no amount of blood magic can fill. He'd have killed him. The theory that he understood and chose mercy requires a dragon who just incinerated a city of civilians to suddenly develop restraint toward the one person who was actually guilty. That's a bigger stretch than the one I'm making. Second, if it isn't the blood, why include the blood at all? The show spends seasons on Jon's parentage. Why put a Targaryen in front of a dragon in the final scene if it means nothing? The parentage matters enormously to the story, to the politics, to Jon. But the scene isn't about the parentage, and the direction is careful about that. If the point were recognition, you'd get the recognition beat. The pause, the sniff, the eyes changing, the visual grammar of a creature identifying kin. That shot exists in film. It's easy to do, and every director knows it. It isn't in the scene. And if the entire theory rests on a recognition beat the director declined to shoot, then that theory is being carried by the audience, not the footage. Third, and this is the one that goes straight at me, you say there's no recognition beat, but the show holds on Drogon's eye. There is a long, deliberate shot of this dragon looking directly at Jon Snow. That is a director putting a camera on a moment of recognition, You're claiming the beat isn't there while the beat is on the screen. That's the best version of the counter argument, and I want to answer it properly rather than talk past it. The shot is real. I'm not disputing the shot. What I'm disputing is what it's a shot of. A look is not a recognition. Recognition is a look plus a change. In film, in life, in every animal you've ever met, when something is identified, the body reports it. The posture shifts, the head cocks, the breathing changes, the eye softens or hardens, and then something happens as a result of the identification. Watch Drogon's face through that shot and tell me what changes. Nothing does. He looks, and then he turns, and he arrives at the throne carrying exactly the same state he brought to Jon. That's not a recognition beat, that's a survey. And there's a control for this in the show, which is why I put Meereen back on screen. When those two dragons recognize Daenerys in the dark, you can see the exact moment it lands. They stop. The aggression drains out of them. The recognition produces a consequence. That's what identification looks like when this show wants you to see it. It looks nothing like the throne room. Drogon looks at Jon the way you look at a chair on your way out of a room, and then he looks at an actual chair, and everything changes. Fourth, she wasn't killed by the throne. She was killed by a man standing directly in front of her. Jon was closer to her body than the chair was. If Drogon is doing crude proximity association, the nearest object to her death was the man he then let walk away. That's the real objection, and here's my honest answer to it. Proximity isn't only spatial, it's temporal, and it's repeated. Drogon has flown that woman toward that object for years. It is the single most reinforced association in his entire experience of her. Thousands of hours of her moving toward one thing. Jon is a man he has seen perhaps twice. So when she stops moving, the thing his memory offers up is not the stranger who happened to be standing there for 90 seconds. It's the object he has spent years watching her chase. And crucially, that's what the footage shows. Whatever process produced it, we can see the output. He had a man with a knife directly in front of him, and he looked past him at a chair. I should be honest about the limits of my own reading too. We never get Drogon's interiority. Nobody in the scene explains anything. The show leaves this deliberately open, and anyone telling you they know for certain what a dragon was thinking is filling in a gap the writers left on purpose. But between a reading that requires an unshot recognition beat and an unexplained act of mercy, and a reading built entirely on what the animal is shown doing, in the order it's shown doing it, I know which one is standing on the footage. Here's why this matters beyond one scene. The Bloodline version makes Drogon a plot device. He spares Jon because the script needs Jon alive, and the blood is the excuse. It's tidy, and it's hollow. The grief version makes him a character, and it makes the ending land in a way the throne as symbolism reading never quite manages. Because Daenerys Targaryen spent her entire life pursuing an object, and everyone around her told her what it meant: legitimacy, destiny, birthright, home. It is the center of every conversation in this story for 8 seasons. And the only creature in the room who truly loved her looks at it and sees no meaning in it whatsoever. No throne, no crown, no claim. Just the thing that was there when she stopped moving. And Jon is left standing there, alive, not because he was chosen, not because his blood saved him, but because in the only moment that ever mattered, he simply wasn't what the dragon was looking at. So watch it again. And this time, don't watch Jon. Watch where the head goes. Nudge. Wait. Nudge again. Turn past the man. Fix on the chair. That order is the entire explanation, and it's on screen the whole time. But here's what I want from you, because I don't think this is settled. If you're convinced it was the blood, then show me the recognition beat. Not the moment he looks at Jon, the moment something changes because he looked. Give me the timestamp. I've gone through that scene frame by frame, and I don't believe the director ever put it there. If it's in the footage, I'll take the whole argument back on camera. Tell me the timestamp.